Hare Krishna to all of you. Good evening. Thank you very much for taking time off a busy Sunday evening and joining this Shravanam session. And we will see how important is Shravanam in Bhakti Yoga. So the topic of Gita Wisdom session today is Bhakti Yoga, that is devotional service. This is chapter 12 in Gita. Let's start with our prayers. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What is the meaning of this prayer? It's very simple. O all attractive Krishna, all pleasing Lord, O energy of the Lord. Hare is energy of the Lord, that is Radharani. Please engage me in your loving devotional service. That is the simple meaning of this powerful Maha Mantra. So in Kali Yuga, this is the mantra which can take us on the path of Bhakti Yoga. And we always start with this sloka because in Gita, Krishna has devoted one full sloka to the importance of listening, that is Shravanam. And in the next slides, you will realize how important is Shravanam for Bhakti Yoga. So let's state this verse. Shraddhavan anasuyascha shrunuyat api yo naraha so api mukta subha lokan prapnuyat punya karmanam. What is the meaning of this? And one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reactions and attains to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. So this 1 hour that we are spending on a Sunday evening is a credit in our permanent bank account. Krishna never forgets any limb of the devotional service that you do for him. So Shravanam is simple listening. So why do we start this prayer and why do we do chanting of this mantra? Basically, it is like the genuine cry of a child asking for his or her mother's presence. So we, as part and parcel of Krishna, are saying this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to remember him, to remember his presence, just like a child remembers her mother or his mother. Now, this mantra is central to Bhakti Yoga. That's why it is so widely followed. The chapter 12 and the importance of Bhakti Yoga is well understood if we get an overview of how Gita is constructed by Krishna. So Gita has, let's take a quick look. Gita has 3 parts. The part 1 is Karma Yoga, which is 1 to 6 chapters. The middle section of Gita is Bhakti Yoga, 7th to 12th. And the last chapter of the midsection, that is chapter 12, is entirely devoted to Bhakti Yoga. So Karma Yoga is yoga of action. Bhakti Yoga is yoga of devotion. And the last section of Gita is Gnana Yoga. That is chapter 13 to 18. And that is yoga of inquiry, yoga of knowledge. So there are 3 paths that Krishna has very clearly defined. All the paths lead to him: karma, gnana, and bhakti. But why is bhakti so important? And why is that one full chapter devoted to Bhakti Yoga? The way to understand this is bhakti is free from jnana and karma. Maybe in Gnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, you have elements of Bhakti Yoga. But bhakti has no dependency on jnana and karma. Second, bhakti is simple. Bhakti is not easy. But Gnana and Karma Yoga take a lot of doing. But bhakti, at least as a layman, we all can understand what is bhakti and how to deliver bhakti, or how to start progressing on the path of Bhakti Yoga. In terms of hierarchy, Bhakti Yoga is higher than Gnana and Karma. And you'll all be quite interested to note that in our material life, we all have known, we know that in Karma Yoga, in our work life, we may be an engineer, we may be a doctor, we all retire. Maybe the retirement age is 58 years, 60 years, or 65 years, whatever it is. So in our material life, there is something called retirement. But in Bhakti Yoga, in devotional service to Lord, there is no retirement. We can continue to serve Him till our last breath. That is what makes Bhakti so unique. Let's move to the next slide. This is the starting of the chapter. We'll start with overview of what is Bhakti. Bhakti comes from the root word bhaj, that is attached to God. So the word itself gives you the indicator that anyone who is a bhakta is engaged in devotional service of the Lord. Before I go into a mathematical definition of bhakti, I also want to share that why is bhakti not understood completely? All of us have a feeling, and maybe that's how our upbringing is. That's what we understand and perceive bhakti to be as devotion. Devotion is the first step of bhakti. What is devotion? Saying our prayers, following regulative principles. But devotion is somewhere tinged with a materialistic desire. Because whenever we say our prayers, we tend to ask Lord for something in return. That's why devotion is not Bhakti Yoga. Devotion is just the starting point of Bhakti Yoga. In devotional service, as we were going to see in the next few minutes, you will realize that the whole purpose of being in Bhakti Yoga is not to ask Lord for anything. That is the essence of Bhakti Yoga. So before I come there, let's start with the definition of Bhakti. To compare Bhakti, the first this equation I give, because most of us are having background of science, technology, and we like equations. So I have defined desire plus sacrifice is equal to love. So you may be wondering, why is that for Bhakti, Shyam is talking about love? Because love is the basic building block for Bhakti. Love is universal. Love in the form of compassion is what can take us to Bhakti. That's the reason why we should understand what is love. And it is not very difficult to understand because all of us have an element of love inbuilt into us. We are in love with our parents. Parents are in love with us. As a boy, he is in love with a girl. As a husband, he is in love with his wife. A grandfather is in love with his grandchildren. So there is a deep, selfless love between two friends. So love is something which is universal, and all of us know love, all of us experience love, all of us give love. So love is within us. So bhakti is also within us. That's the message. And how do we discover bhakti? Let's look at this equation. So desire is common, plus the desire to serve Lord is common. Now the sacrifice becomes surrender. That is what makes bhakti more powerful than love. And now we have a choice. Whom do you surrender to? In Gita, this puzzle, this question is also clearly answered. Krishna says, either you surrender to me or you have an option of surrendering to 33 crore Devi Devatas in this world. And when I say Devi Devatas, we are all familiar with Ganesha, Ganapati, Ayyappa, Durga Devi, you name it. There are 33 crore Devi Devatas. The choice is yours. But he also says, an intelligent person will surrender to me because I am the Supreme Lord. I am the absolute truth. Let's not go there because that's a subject of another discussion, another session. But the wisdom is there in Gita, whom we should surrender to. Next, we will come back to surrender and sacrifice. I'm only giving you the concept now. Let's get into the details. Before that, a brief overview of this chapter. There are 3 sections to this chapter. We will cover the first 2 sections in detail, and we just have an overview of the section 3. So Bhakti is, what is the first section? That is 12.1 to 12.7, 7 most important verses. Bhakti is superior to impersonalist worship. That is the message that Krishna is giving Arjuna. we will see what is impersonalism, what is personalism going forward. The second section of this chapter is progressive stages of devotion. All of us are sadhakas. So we must read this chapter to understand how we can progress and what is the path we should adopt. And the third part of the section of this chapter is qualities which endear one to Krishna. So there are 39 qualities which are defined. Let's have a quick look in one slide as we come to the end of the chapter. What is the puzzle all about? Why is Krishna or why is
Can
Arjuna?
I ask, are you sharing this slide? Because
You can
it's
see
only in the corner, not the whole. It's not in the share view. Is it? Should I be looking at the wrong view? Am I looking
can see
at
it.
not the,
You all
it's
can see
just
the
in the
slide or you
corner.
cannot see?
I can see
You can
it.
you can see only in the corner, not mainly.
No, but
You carry on. You carry on. Sorry.
Okay, I think
Sorry,
you must adjust the settings then.
Maybe. Thank you.
So the whole, this chapter is built on the inquisitiveness, curiosity of Arjuna, because he's asking Krishna a simple question. He says, between Saguna and Nirguna, which is the most recommended form of devotion? And we will see Krishna is going to give an answer conclusively. There is no doubt after listening to this chapter that what is Krishna's message? And Krishna's message is Bhakti Yoga is the most perfect form of yoga to worship me. Now, next point. What is the goal of Bhakti? The goal is loving service for Krishna. And what is service? Keep this thought in mind. I will come to the answer. And the answer is loving service, devotional service means there are 9 limbs that we have to follow. And it's a ladder. So you can start from first and go to the last. And the last one is surrender, Atma Nivedana. So that is how difficult is surrender for anyone in this world. So it's easier to talk about, but difficult to achieve. Now, there has to be some background to really understand why Krishna loves his devotees so much. Because, as I said, bhakti is not just devotion. It is not about saying our prayers, following the regulative principles. Those are all must do. In bhakti, the most important distinguishing factor, what makes it unique, is a bhakta does not ask Krishna for anything. That is the beauty of devotional service. It is pure selfless love. We all know that we have 4 purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. A bhakta forgets asking Krishna even for moksha. He says, as long as I'm with you, Lord, I don't even seek a blessing for moksha. That is what makes bhakti so important, so pure, simple, but not easy to achieve. So what is Krishna's assurance to you in return? If you do this throughout your life, he says, I will relieve you from samsara mrityu sagara. That is my promise to you. I will take you to Goloka Vrindavana. That is the destination in the universe where nobody ever comes back into this world. That is the ultimate moksha that one can achieve. So that is the assurance from Krishna towards his devotees. Every one of us. There is nothing like someone gets more, someone gets less. Everyone is equal. So what is the journey of this chapter? Very interesting. Krishna says in 12.2, Mayi aveshya mano ye mam. So he's starting with telling Arjuna, fix your mind and intelligence on me. That is my personal form. Then he continues the importance of personal worship, what is the ladder of love, and then he comes to the last verse in this chapter where he says, Ye tu dharma mrutam idam. So he says, those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service. So he's very, very clear. He says, I want you to follow this path of devotional service. And if you follow, what is the result? Krishna ends the chapter by saying, Bhaktaste ativa me priyaha. So in 12.13 to 12.20, every verse he has said, you are dear to me. That is what is the importance of bhakti devotional service. Now, how to understand sacrifice? How to understand surrender? In simple words, sacrifice is a pre-signed check which you give to Krishna. The amount is filled and you have signed. You are being magnanimous, you are being selfless because you have taken a portion of your earnings and given to Krishna. Sacrifice is important. Now let's understand why surrender is more important and more difficult. Surrender is a blank check. You are giving Krishna a check which is fully signed and he is free to fill the amount. So now you understand what is the difference between sacrifice and surrender. Now, yes, they are still words. They are still concepts. Let's make an attempt to understand the difference between sacrifice and surrender. Let me go back to a story in Mahabharata. So King Yudhishthira, that is Dharmaraya, after winning the Kurukshetra war, on advice of Krishna, decides to perform a yajna. And he says, this yajna is to wash me clean of all the sins, because there are so many people who are killed. There is mass suffering in my kingdom. And I want, Lord, through this sacrifice to be pleased and bless my kingdom with peace and prosperity. So he conducts the yajna in the best form that is ever seen. The entire kingdom is happy. People are overjoyed. There is good food. There is a lot of gifts for poor people, and it was lavish. You can't see, or you could not have seen anything better than that. So all the people were saying, glories to Dharmaraya. You have done a wonderful yajna. Just when the people were celebrating in this joy, there was a small mongoose which comes to that place where the yajna was held. And he starts rolling in the sand where the yajna was held. People are surprised. Why is this mongoose here? And why is this mongoose rolling in the sand? And mongoose, after a few seconds of rolling in the sand, gets up, dusts itself and says, I don't think this is the greatest sacrifice ever. All of you are lying. People are surprised. They said, such a small animal, mongoose, has got the guts to come and tell us after such a wonderful sacrifice that this is not the best yajna? Then they say, you silly mongoose, can you please tell us what is the reason? Then mongoose says, I am not as learned as all of you, but please give me a few minutes. I will share my story with you. And then mongoose starts. Says that I have witnessed this. There was a village, and that part of the kingdom was having severe famine, drought. There was no water, food was difficult to come by. And a Brahmin family lived in that village. He was married, he had a son, and the son was also married. There were 4 people who lived in that house. And they were struggling to make ends meet, no food. And one day, Brahmana was lucky. He gets some good bhiksha, he brings it home, and wife cooks a good meal. So they're all ready to sit together and have their lunch. Just then, someone is knocking the door. So the Brahmana goes up, looks at, opens the door and welcomes the guest. The guest comes in, and it is a tradition in our Hindu culture, Hindu religion, Hindu dharma, Sanatan dharma. What is that? Atiti Devo Bhava. Any guest who comes home during lunchtime or dinner time is fed lavishly. That is our culture. That is our value system. And Brahmana, maybe he's poor, he doesn't have food. That doesn't matter. The principle and value of life doesn't change. So he says, guest, please wash yourself, get yourself fresh, come and have lunch with us. And the guest is blissfully unaware. What is the situation of this Brahmin family? They don't have food for themselves, and they're offering him food as a guest. He is so hungry, he is happy to accept the offer. So he says, please serve. So the Brahmin tells his wife, you serve my portion of the lunch, so let the guest be fed and be happy. The guest has that part of the food and he says, I'm still hungry. Can you give me more? Then the Brahmin's wife stands up and says, I will sacrifice my food and I will serve it to the guest. Wife does it. Then he's still not happy. He's still not satisfied. Then the son stands up, offers his part of the food. He is still not satisfied. Then the son's wife stands up and says, it is my duty, and she offers her portion of the food. And at that time, the guest says, I am full. Thank you very much. God bless you. And he leaves the family. You won't believe, it was such a bad scene. The Brahmin's family could not get any food for the next few days, and they all died. So the entire family sacrificed, but they remember the word sacrificed. This is sacrifice. They never thought about what is going to happen to us. And what happened to them? They lost their lives. They paid for with their own lives. And this mongoose visited that place, and there were a few morsels of grain which were fallen on the floor. He ate that and he rolled on the ground. And the mongoose was innocent. Mongoose had no idea what is the sanctity of that place, what is the sacredness of that place. Immediately after he ate that few morsels and rolled on the ground, the mongoose got turned into half the body of mongoose became gold. And then the mongoose realized, this must be the most sacred place that I have ever visited. And from that day, the mongoose started looking at, can I visit another place where the other half of my body will become gold? And it was unsuccessful attempt. And he comes to this place where Dhanuraya did the yagya, and there also he is not successful. And he says, my dear learned people of this kingdom, I am telling you that this is not the greatest sacrifice because of this story and because of my own life experience. Entire people who were there, including Dharmaraya, Yudhishthira, they said, we are very sorry, mongoose, you have taught us humility. And you have told us that this is not the greatest of sacrifice because you could not get your half body converted to gold. The moral of the story is sacrifice is on such a high pedestal. It is not easy. You may start with an intention of doing your duty, but end up giving up your life. But we should be prepared for sacrifice. So the Brahmin family, needless to say, achieved moksha. And the Krishna was so happy, he granted them freedom from life of a cycle of birth and death. Now, this is sacrifice. What is surrender then? We can understand surrender by looking at example of Mirabai. In fact, in Gita 7.14, Krishna says this sloka, Daivi hi isha gunamai, mama maya dhrutyaya, mama eva ye prapadyante, mayam etam taranti te. What it says is this divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So the word surrender is defined in two contexts by Krishna. We should not have any doubt as to how this works. So let's look at an example from the scriptures to understand what is surrender. Surrender is lifelong. And the example I want to quote is Mirabai. I'm sure all of us would have heard in our young childhood days the story of Mirabai. Mirabai was a great devotee of Krishna. She was born in a royal family. But since her childhood days, she had only one thing to say. That was, my husband is Krishna and I belong to him and I will worship him throughout my life. Their family tried to change her. They got her married. They hoped that, marriage will change her, but nothing changed. I'm sure we all know, I've read about the great devotional songs that Mirabai has written in praise of Krishna, and she spent her entire life dedicated to Krishna. That is surrender. She was from a royal family, but she gave up everything. There is an element of sacrifice involved, but her objective of life is, I will devote myself to entire service of Krishna. That is surrender. And you can see that surrender is so pure and divine that there are few Mirabais as examples that we can quote. After Mirabai, I don't think you will have another example across centuries to say that, yes, we have another devotee who is so surrendered to Krishna. That is what makes surrender so unique. The last concept of this slide is, what is devotional service? It looks easy. We can understand Bhakti Yoga, but then have we really got the clear understanding? Now Krishna gives you the path of devotional service. He says there are 9 limbs that we must follow. The choice is ours. And I am happy to say, first limb of Bhakti Yoga is Shravanam. And we are all doing Shravanam now. I am doing Kirtanam because I'm talking. You all are doing Shravanam because you all are listening. And when you ask questions, I will be doing Shravanam, you will be doing Kirtanam. So both of us are following Bhakti Yoga. Hearing, the most important thing of Bhakti Yoga. You start your devotional service journey by listening. Then you go to chanting, Kirtanam, remembering Vishnu Smaranam. Fourth, serving the Lord's lotus feet, that is Pada Sevanam. Deity worship that we see in a temple, Archanam. Praying, we all say our prayers every day to the Lord, that is Vandanam. Seventh, carrying out the orders of the Lord, Dasyam. Arjuna was Dasyam. No, sorry, Hanuman was Dasyam. He was completely devoted to Lord Rama. Becoming friends with him, Sakyam, that was Arjuna. Surrendering everything to him, that is Atma Nivedana. You can see, even in the 9 limbs of Bhakti, surrender is the last. So that shows how important it is. And to have that surrender, to go towards surrender, what is the important currency we should have? Faith. Without faith, we cannot progress in Bhakti Yoga. So with this, we have completed the first slide. Okay, I have one more concept to cover, because most of us are not very clear as to what is impersonal worship and what is personal worship. So I'll give you a quick overview of that. So personal, impersonal, Paramatma, all are 3 features of Lord. So in Bhagavatam, he says, learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. In 7.24, Krishna says, Avyaktam Vyaktim Apannam Manyante Mam Abuddhaya Parambhavam Ajananto Mamavyayam Anuttamam. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So what is Krishna trying to tell is that my true form is always personal. Impersonal is a part of me. So you have Brahman, there are Brahmavadis, Mayavadis, a huge part of the population who follow that Lord is impersonal, he is Brahmajyoti. That is part of the truth. There are Gnana Yogis who spend their entire life studying scriptures and they come to Paramatma realization. Only a Bhakta in Bhakti Yoga can realize Bhagwan as his personal form. So Krishna is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat is eternal, Brahman realization. Chit is knowledge, that is Paramatma realization. And blissful, one can be blissful only after discovering the Bhagwan feature of the Lord. That is what Bhakti Yoga takes us to. So with this, we have finished the first slide, getting into the details of chapter 12. So Arjuna begins this chapter with the question, who is superior? So in 12.1, Arjuna is saying, Arjuna uvacha evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvam paryupasate ye chapi aksharam avyaktam tesam ke yoga vittamaha. What is the meaning of this? Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? This was the question. And you may be wondering, why is Arjuna asking this question at the beginning of the chapter? The background to that is, in the 11th chapter, which is titled Vishwarupa Darshana, Universal Form of the Lord, Arjuna is completely convinced because Krishna has shown him that the entire universe lies within me. But then Arjuna sees around and he's also aware that there are equally large part of the population who are devotees of the Lord, but they don't believe in personal form, but they believe in Brahmajyoti, impersonal form. So he says, Let me ask Krishna and make this clear once and for all generations to come. And let's see what are the two classes of people he is defining. Personalist who prays to Krishna, and we know Krishna has so many names as deities. He's known as Sham Sundara, he's known as Murli, he's known as Gopala, he's known as Keshava, he's known as Madhava. He has so many names. So this is all familiar to us. We visit any temple, we see the Lord in one of the form, and he's being worshipped. And then there is another huge part who are saying, we believe in Brahma Jyoti. We believe the Lord has no form. Now, this is the question. Let's see what Krishna has to say. Krishna says in 12.2, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, one of the most important verses of this chapter. Mayi aveshya mano yemam nitya yukta upasate shraddhaya paryopetas teme yukta tamamataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. The word yukta tamamataha is you are perfect. There is no doubt left after this from Krishna's telling Arjuna that a pure devotee is one who worships my personal form. So what is devotion? Now, why is this considered to be the most important form of worship? Because in devotion, what is devotion? Devotion is like a disciplehood. So whenever we want to learn, we go to a teacher and we become his disciple. So even in teacher, there are two classes as per scriptures, Vedas. It says, teacher is one who teaches us information, knowledge. He gives us shiksha, using the right word. So a teacher is one who gives us shiksha. But shiksha is not enough to understand the Lord, because shiksha is all about material elements, material science. Spiritual is beyond material. And for that, you need to have the support, help of a master. He is known as a spiritual master or guru. Now, what is the difference between a teacher and a guru? So teacher gives us shiksha, guru gives us diksha. Now you may be wondering, what is the meaning of diksha and why is it so important? So diksha is where the guru helps us understand the 9 limbs of devotional service, opens up our eyes to the supreme, sublime, divine form of the Lord and why we should surrender unto him. Master, guru acts on our consciousness. He is not here to give us information. He is not here to give us knowledge. He is here to give us transformation. We are transformed if we are under the services of a spiritual master. So to understand this, we need to take shelter of a guru, and only then we can progress on the path of Bhakti Yoga. Let's look at the next verse. Now Krishna is giving further description of the process and destination of impersonal Brahman worshippers. So we must have this discrimination in our mind that we are not talking about inferior, superior. There is no one who is inferior. There is no one who is superior when you pray to the Lord. You are free to pray to the Lord, because how do you understand impersonal and personal is, if you look at sunlight, is sunlight real? We all agree, yes. Every day morning, sunlight removes darkness from this world. So the impersonal worshippers believe that Lord is light, and light is powerful. We all know that. But where does the light come from? If you ask that question, which is going to be what a Gnani is going to do, following the path of Gnana Yoga, he comes to the realization that this sunlight is emanating from the sun star. That is how he understands the Paramatma feature of the Lord. And then a devotee, a bhakta, says, there is sunlight, yes, it is true. There is the sun star, yes, it is true, because the light is coming from the sun star, but there is sun god, Surya, who drives himself on a 7-horse chariot. I want to surrender myself unto him. So all the three are real. All the three are features of the Lord. Now you decide where you want to be. But bhakti is superior to jnana and karma. Let's look at these two verses. Yetva aksharam anirdeshyam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatragam achintyam cha kutastam achalam dhruvam sanniyamendriya gramam sarvatra samabhuddaya te prapnuvanti mam eva sarvabhuta hite rataha. Very important line. Sarvabhuta hite rataha. What is the meaning of this? Those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons, and when you say equally disposed to everyone, that is sarva bhuta hite rataha. Such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. So he is giving you the description of the worship of Brahman. So what are the features of Brahman? He says Aksharam. Aksharam is you can't designate him. You can't see him. There is no form. Anirdeshyam, no form. Avyaktam, it is spread everywhere. Sarvatragam, beyond logic. Achintyam, and extending over all time. Kutastam, it is not subject to change. Does sunlight change? It doesn't change. At best, in the early morning, it is easy to be outside in the sun, but as it becomes noon, it becomes hot. Except for that, there is no change in sunlight for today, tomorrow, and for thousands of years. So that is the achalam feature of the impersonal form. It is eternal. This sunlight is going to exist as long as this planet and the earth is going to exist. That is dhruvam. So Lord says, yes, you can attain me. This is one feature of me by doing impersonal worship. But let me tell you, it is not easy. That is the message that he gives Arjuna. Now, if you want to follow the impersonal worship, Krishna is defining three paths or three steps. So he says, control your senses. Sanniyenamindriya gramam. You must control your senses. I think you all remember we had a Sthita Prajna section and we knew or we have studied how difficult it is to control our senses. So if you control your senses, you become a Sthita Prajna and then you achieve the state of happiness while living in this world. Sthitadhir muniruchyate. That is the first step. Second, you have to be equanimous. You have to be equal to happiness. You have to be equal to sadness. Both are related. So don't get affected if you are happy. Don't get affected or be joyful when there is happiness, and be very sad and grim when there is a tragedy facing you. So this is equanimity. That is the second quality. Third is sarva bhuta hite rataha. You must have the welfare of all in your mind. You must be open to serve others. If you do this, then you can come to me following the impersonal path. That is the message of this 12.3 and 12.4. So let's look at the next verses. It continues. Attachment to impersonal conception. Why is it difficult? Or why we should decide. Should I be an impersonalist or I should be a personalist? So Krishna is very clearly saying in these two verses that impersonal worship is not easy. Klesho adhika taraste sam avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi ghatir dukkham devadbhir avapyate. What is Krishna saying? For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Embodied is a jiva, an atma, people like us. So Krishna is saying, yes, you want to follow this path of Gnana Yoga, choice is yours, but it is very difficult for you to achieve it. He gives us in the Sthita Prajna section also, we had seen this, controlling the senses. It's like saying, asking the rivers to stop flowing to the ocean. It is difficult. Not impossible, very, very difficult. But if you want to achieve impersonal form of the Lord, you must control your senses. And he also gives another example. He says that if you beat an empty husk of wheat, can you get anything? Nothing. So impersonal worship is very hard, difficult, and not easy for a layman. That is the conclusion. Let's look at what is the advantage of the personal form of worship, which is the devotional form. So there are two verses which describe this. 12.6. Etu sarvani karmani mayi sannyasa matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate. 12.7. Tesam aham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat. The repeated cycle of life and death. Mrityu samsara sagarat. Bhavami na chirat partha mayi aveshita chetasam. What is he saying? Compared to that, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pruta. This is another name for Arjuna. For them, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So this is very clear. Messages like, if you are under devotional service towards me, then you have the safety, security of a child under the care of her or his parents. So as long as we are children, as long as we are under the shelter of our parents, we always feel secure. So if we adopt this path of Bhakti Yoga, we are under the protection of the Lord. And Lord is saying, oh Arjuna, I will deliver you from this repeated cycle of birth and death. Samsara mrityu sagarat. That is my assurance to you. So that is the reason why personal worship is so important, and Bhakti Yoga is the most advised path to adopt for all devotees. Now let's come. I think with this we have finished the first section of the chapter. We are now going to the second part of the chapter. And here Krishna tells us what is the ladder of love to Krishna, and it is your choice. So the verse 8 to 9 is about bhakti with internal senses, using our mind and intelligence. 10, 11, 10th is bhakti with external senses. 11th is giving up the results of work, sacrifice. And 12th, the hierarchy, which is superior, and it's in the ascending order. You start from mind and intelligence down to controlling giving up the results of our work. Let's look at ladder of love. Let's start with 12.8. I have split this into 8A and 8B. It says, Mayi eva mana adatsva. Adatsva is control. Mayi buddhim niveshaya. So mana adatsva, control your mind. Mayi buddhim niveshaya, control your intelligence. Niveshasyasi mayi eva atha urdhvam na samshayaha. What is Krishna saying? Offering one's mind and intelligence to Krishna entirely and thereby live in him. That is bhakti, or pure stage of love. So when we worship Krishna through our mind, that is called smarana atmika bhakti. When we worship Krishna through our intelligence, we call it manana atmika bhakti. So Krishna has defined that this is the highest level, and from here you choose. Now to go to the level of controlling mind and intelligence is, you should be at the level of surrender. You should be a Mirabai. Now choice is yours. It's not that we cannot be. If we want to be, we can be. But it is difficult. Now, you may be wondering, why is Krishna giving a choice? Because he knows in Kali Yuga, it's not easy. Where, action, activity is so important, then people are not going to surrender. So he says, I am giving you a ladder. You climb it the way you want. All the steps bring you to me. So it's like, if you are a boat, you're navigating a boat, in an ocean, it's like you follow the rules. It's not that, just because the wind is blowing from north to south, I'll follow that wind and I will reach my place. No. Just because you feel that, the shortest distance is a straight path between A to B, I will start, driving my boats in the straight direction. Is it possible? Not possible. What is possible is you have to follow the navigational map, which tells you how you should reach A to B. Similarly, Krishna is saying, this is the steps. These are the 4 steps that are there. You decide and you choose which one you want to choose. Now, when you say Smarana-atmika Bhakti and Manana-atmika Bhakti, it is also called Buddhi Yoga. And this is defined in 2nd chapter, where Krishna says, since this is so difficult and it is completely internal to you, I would rank this as Buddhi Yoga. So we must understand Buddhi Yoga and Bhakti Yoga are one and the same. But we must realize it is very difficult to achieve the status of controlling our mind and intelligence. There is a nice story in the scriptures to show you why these people become immortal. For generations, people refer to Mirabai, and now I'm going to talk about Shabri. Shabri was a great devotee of Rama. I'm sure most of us know the story. And Shabri had such love for Rama. She said, I have nothing which I can offer to the Lord, except that I go to the forest, pick up some fruits, and bring it back, and I keep it. And the day I meet Rama, I will give the fruits. This was her routine. And in that, Shabri had another unique practice. And that is, whatever fruit she could pick up or pluck, she used to bite and taste it. She said, I will not give a fruit which is not sweet to my Lord. So that was her devotion. That was her faith. And she lived like this for years. She was under the shelter of a sage, Rishi, sage Matanga. She lived with him for a long time and he passed away. Before passing away, she told Shabri, Mataji, you don't leave my ashram. You live here and I'm assuring you that Rama will give you his darshan. You are one of those chosen few devotees. And Shabri continued with that faith. She became old and she said, am I really going to see the Lord before I have to give up my body? But that one day appeared. Lord Rama came to the ashram, gave her his darshan, and she fell at his feet and offered him the fruits. Rama was just about to accept the basket of fruits and start eating when his own brother Lakshmana steps and says, Oh Lord, Shabri Mataji has broken one rule. She has tasted every fruit which she is giving to you. The ritual is different. In fact, we should offer any food to the Lord and then have it as prasad. So Shabri Mataji has done it completely reverse. But Rama says, the intention, the bhava of my devotee is important. Why did Shabri do that? Because she wanted to taste and give me only the sweetest of all fruits. So I will accept these fruits with love and I will enjoy it. So that is devotion. That is living with your mind and intelligence only for the Lord. So Shabri is one of those classic examples of a devotee totally surrendered, and she offered her internal senses to the Lord. Can we do that? We can get inspiration. But is it easy? It is not easy. Let's look at the second ladder, the step in the ladder. 12.9. Atha chittam samadhutam na sakshnosi mai sthiram abhyasa yogena tatho mam ichhaptum dhananjaya. Dhananjaya is another name for Arjuna. Krishna calls him by so many names in Gita. So the translation of this verse is, my dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then practice regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, Sadhana Bhakti, to develop a desire to attain me. Now, this is like, we are all sadhakas. And sadhana bhakti is a journey because we have decided to live in this world and also follow the path of Bhakti Yoga, which is acceptable to Krishna. He says, I want you to be in the family. You live with your parents, you get married, you live with your wife, have children, look after them. You lead a complete Gruhasta's life. I have no issues. But even in this life, I have given you a path as to how you could reach me. And that is by sadhana. And what is sadhana? You dedicate some part of your faculties to the Lord every day. You have 9 limbs, you decide how much of it can you imbibe and practice in your daily life. Now, what is the objective of sadhana? What do you achieve out of sadhana? If I were to tell you, and I can tell you this through a nice story. So there was a Baniya. Baniya, I'm sure all of you understand, a businessman. And the story calls him Baniya, so I'll also use the word Baniya so that you get that full essence of the story. So Baniya was a good man. He did business on good principles. And he was very keen to achieve Diksha. And you know, I told you, only a spiritual master can give us Diksha. And he went to the sadhu in the town and said, "Oh, dear sage, why don't you give me Diksha? That's the one thing which I'm missing in life." The sadhu said, "Well, there is a time and place for everything. Meet me after a couple of years, then I will give you Diksha." The Baniya was slightly disappointed. So he went back and he said, "Okay, let me live my life and I will wait for my day." After a few years, the sadhu again comes back to the town. And the Baniya rushes to him and he has full of sweet boxes with him. The choicest sweets made by his own hands. So he was not short of devotion. He loved the sage, he loved the guru, and he really wanted to please the guru. So he goes and says, "I want to make you this offering." The sadhu says, "Okay, no issues. Here is my begging bowl." And you will be surprised. The sadhu guru had put all obnoxious items in that begging bowl. There was mud, there was urine, there was stool, etc., etc., etc. You just couldn't even look at that begging bowl. And the guru is offering it to the Baniya and says, "You put all your sweets in this bowl and give it to me." The Baniya is shocked and angry. He says, "Oh, Guru, how can you expect me to put all this sweets which I have made out of so much of love for you in this bowl which is full of contamination?" The sadhu says, "My dear Baniya, I am so happy that you recognize the contamination in the bowl, because now my question to you is, how can I put the pure Lord in your mind which is full of contamination? You are full of pride, lust, anger. So you want me to put my Lord in your mind? Do you think it is possible?" Then the Baniya understands, "Oh my God, why is the Guru not giving me Diksha? That is because I am not purified." So the moral of the story, the essence of sadhana bhakti, whatever limb of bhakti we choose, you choose all the 9 limbs, try to go to Atma Nivedana, is we achieve purification. Purity of mind, purity of thought. If we are able to achieve that, we can achieve bhakti yoga. That is the message of this verse. Let's look at 12.10. Abhyase api asamarto asi, mat karma paramo bhava, mad artham api karmani, kurvam siddhim avapsasi. This is far easier to understand. Mat karma paramo bhava. What is Krishna saying? If you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. Working for Krishna by contributing to his service. Far easier to understand than sadhana bhakti. Because sadhana bhakti is a journey. Here what Krishna is saying that you work for me. How do we work for him? There are 2 ways of working for him. Either directly. When you say directly, what do you mean? You get associated with the temple, offer some service in the temple, or read Gita, preach Gita. That is service to him directly. You are putting your mind and intelligence to first read, understand, and then speak about Gita. That is the best direct service that you could do to the Lord. Second, indirect. Offer in the fruits of our work. Now here, there is an important input, insight I wish to share. So we all feel, offer him the fruits of our work. What does it mean? So the scripture says, when you say offer him the results of your work, it's not that, I earn 100 rupees as salary. So I spend 80 rupees on all meeting my needs. 10 rupees goes into my saving. And in that 10 rupees, which is left, I will give 1 rupee to the Lord. Now we feel we are doing a great work of charity because I have given 1 rupee to the Lord. But we must all first remove our ignorance. We have to become aware. We have to gain knowledge. The scripture says, if you love the Lord, if you want to be adopting the path of Bhakti Yoga by doing work for the Lord, whatever you earn, 50% of that should be given to the Lord, because Lord is equal to you in your mind, as important as your family member. Now, when I read this for the first time a few years ago, I realized living by the scriptural guidance principle is easier said than done. How many of us can give away 50% of our salary happily to the Lord? And that is the question I leave with each one of you. Reflect on it. That is giving results of your work to the Lord. Is it easy? You decide. 12.11. Athaitad api asakto asi kartum mad yogam ashritaha sarva karma phalatyagam tata kuru yatatmavan. What is Krishna saying here? He says, even if you cannot work for me, if you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all the results of your work and try to be self-situated. So this is the fourth step on the ladder. So here, Krishna is saying, you can't work for me? Okay, at least dedicate the results of your work to me. This is, again, as I said, easier said than done. Because most of the time, we feel that if I do some work, I must get my result. And if I don't get my result, Krishna is not being benevolent. He is not blessing me. So even this concept looks simple, but hardly few of us are able to do this. It's like saying, I earn the salary. This month, I have decided to give away 90% to Krishna. Why? Because of my love to him. Is it possible? No. The wife, the family, the responsibilities, the investments, the savings, all the paraphernalia of attractions that we have attached ourselves do not allow us to give away the fruits of our results to the Lord. There also we haggle, we negotiate, and we say, I will give so much, I cannot give you more than this. So this is the path of ladder of love. You decide whether you want to be at the path of giving a mind and intelligence, or you come down to the level of saying that I will serve Krishna through Bhakti Yoga by just giving away the results of my work to Krishna. Choice is yours. And if you see this, 3 and 4, that is 12.10 and 12.11, are far easier for us. If we are doing what we are going to do, or what we are doing, like reading scriptures, Shravanam, listening to Gita, chanting of Gita, sharing of Gita, Kirtanam, then we are in the level of sadhana bhakti. So we are trying to get into the level of sadhana bhakti. And that requires regular practice, regular commitment, regular practice, or regular sacrifice of time. On a Sunday evening, you could do so many things. But the very fact that you are here listening to Gita shows that you are a sadhaka and you want to progress on this journey of sadhana bhakti. Let's look at the next slide. Now, this verse is one of the most philosophical verse. And I will tell you that I am only give you a very broad view. You can spend the whole day, whole month, whole year discussing only 12.12. Because Krishna gives a googly here to Arjuna. But in this 1 hour session, what we will understand is, what is Krishna telling Arjuna? The philosophical interpretation, maybe we will have another class for it where we discuss only 12.12. Let's look at why this verse is so philosophical. Krishna starts with this. Shreyo hi gnanam abhyasaj, meaning is, for those who cannot follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, better to cultivate knowledge. So what Krishna is saying, start with Gnana Yoga. Read, get knowledge. Then you are progressing towards me. Now, how do we get jnana? It is like I read Gita, I read Vedas, I read Upanishads, I go to various lectures, and I understand what is the message of Krishna for me in Gita. That's the path of Gnana Yoga to gain knowledge. Then Krishna says, Gnana dhyanam vishishyate. So he says, Dhyana Smarana Atmika Bhakti is better than Gnana, Manana Atmika Bhakti, because knowledge gradually develops into meditation. So from Gnana Yoga, you get Gnana, and he says, you practice that, make it Abhyasa, and then it becomes Dhyana Yoga, which is meditation. Now you may be wondering, what is a meditation? I can understand. I sit in a place and think about the Lord undisturbed. It could be for 1 minute, it could be for 5 minutes. The choice is yours. And I do it regularly. That is Abhyasa. Abhyasa means repetition. Now, how do we understand repetition? We are all so used to this. This is part and parcel of our life. And particularly since I'm a marketing and sales professional, I can tell you an example closer from my field. Repetition is the lifeline of advertisement. If you watch any advertisement, you take Coke, Pepsi, Thumbs Up. Has anything changed in this formulation for the last 100 years? But every summer, when the demand peaks, you will see a new star coming with an endorsement, and there will be an even more exciting TV video, which will tell us why we should look at tasting Coke and what is the refreshment we get by having a bottle of Coke. So this is the same principle even in spirituality, even in our path of spiritual journey. Practice, abhyasa, do the same thing again and again daily. If I chant, I'm not allowed to say I have chanted on Monday. Now next Sunday, till next Sunday, I will not chant. No. Every day, get up at 4 o'clock, irrespective of whether it is a Sunday, Saturday, weekend, holiday, weekday. It doesn't matter. And offer yourself to the Lord. That is abhyasa. That becomes meditation. So he says, Gnana, get Gnana knowledge, and then put it into practice, meditate, abhyasa. That's what brings you to me. 12.C. He's saying, Dhyanat karma phalatyagas. If one cannot do meditation, then one can renounce the results of his prescribed work for some good cause. So if you cannot meditate, it is going back to the ladder of love. He says, renounce, give up the results of your work for some good cause. So this is slightly easier to do, where we say that, okay, I will give away 50% is the amount that is recommended in the scriptures. I may at least go up to 5%. That is what we could do in our day-to-day life. He ends this by saying, Tyaga Chantir Anantaraman. By renunciation, one attains peace. Devotional renunciation for peace of mind. So this is repeated even in verse 11, where he ended the verse saying, Sarva Karma Phalatyaga. And now in 12, he's saying, Karma Phalatyagas. So it is so important, it is so simple, that if we understand it, of course, we can start practicing. And that is the whole purpose of this ladder of love. And you will get peace, devotional renunciation. What is devotional renunciation? Krishna is saying, detach. Now, how can I give away part of my work or part of my results to Krishna if I am able to renounce, if I am able to detach myself from that attachment to the results? As long as you say, this money is my saving in the account, it is mine, then you are attached to it. Renunciation is, this is my money, I have earned it, but who is the person whom I would like to share this with love? That's the Lord. Then you have moved away from attachment to detachment. Then 5% or 50%, both are same. It is just a matter of time before you start getting into that level of detachment when you say that I will give away 50% of my earnings to the Lord. So by renunciation, one attains peace. So keep this in mind. 12.12, the most philosophical verse of Gita. It has got a lot of contradictions. The best of experts on Gita go deep into it and say why Krishna is giving this. Actually, in Gita, it is, you start with karma, go to karma phala tyaga, go to jnana, go to nishkama karma yoga, come to bhakti yoga, go to prema yoga, bhava yoga. There are various steps, but here Krishna has slightly twisted it and has given it. Of course, the purpose of Krishna doing this is to test how you understand the philosophy behind this, why I am saying this. But I don't want to go into the philosophical details because it's too deep, very difficult for us to discuss in this limited period of time. So let's go to the last section, and that is section 3, qualities that endear one to Krishna. I'm not going into the details of this. All of us can read this slokas because Krishna has described, you won't believe, 39 qualities that he says are dear to him. So what we do is, since we have lack of time, the way to understand this is that the 39 qualities that Krishna describes to Arjuna are split into 2 buckets. One is Tatastha Lakshanam. That is, you can have that. You may, let us say, out of 38, develop only 30. It is still okay. But there is one which is Swarupa Lakshanam. That is, you must have it. If you don't have that, you cannot be going on the path of Bhakti Yoga. And that is Bhaktiman. In 12.13 to 12.20, Krishna uses this word Bhaktiman quite a few times. So he says, as long as you are having that faith to develop bhakti in me and become a Bhaktiman, you can easily progress on the path of Bhakti Yoga. So this is the last section. Please go through this, understand this as to what are the qualities that we must create in ourselves, develop in ourselves, polish in ourselves, fine-tune in ourselves to go closer to the Lord. Now we come to the summary of the section of what we have discussed so far. Summary is bhakti. It is coming from the root word bhaj, attached to God. Famous equation of bhakti is desire plus surrender is equal to bhakti, and we decide whom to surrender to. And Krishna says, one who is intelligent surrenders to Krishna. Choice is yours. There are 39 qualities that we have to develop to be a devotee as per Krishna. And 38 are Tatastha Lakshanam. That is nice to have, but bhakti is must have, Swarupa Lakshanam. What is the journey of spiritual Bhakti Yoga? If I were to say that in simple words, what is this Krishna consciousness? Why are we learning these 9 limbs of devotional service? Simple. The equation is, you move from a selfish state to a state of selflessness. You move from me, mine, I to we, Lord, everything is yours. That's the essence, sum and substance of Bhakti Yoga. What is the goal of Bhakti Yoga? Spiritual loving service for Krishna. We want to develop, inculcate, imbibe, embed the love for Krishna. That is Bhakti Yoga. And what is the assurance of Krishna? He says, because you are selfless, you have given up the I and mine, I will deliver you from the samsara, mrityu samsara swagarat, freed from the cycle of birth and death. Easy to understand. See, devotion, devotional service. So what is devotional service? The Krishna has defined 9 limbs of it. Shravanam, which we are all doing. Kirtanam, when I am talking about Gita, it is Kirtanam. When you are listening to Gita, it is Shravanam. Smaranam, you are remembering the Lord. Pada Sevanam, you are offering service to his Pada, that is feet. Archanam, you are praying to him. You are worshipping him. Vandanam, saying your prayers. Dasyam, you become his, what you can say, like, yes, you are your servant. What is Hanuman? He says, I am servant of Lord. That is Dasyam. Sakyam, Arjuna. He is a friend of Krishna. And Atma Nivedanam, the last step, that is surrender. The ladder of love is described, which is giving us a choice which we can adopt. So the first one is the highest, at the highest level is Smaranatmika Bhakti, Mananatmika Bhakti, where you offer your mind and intelligence to Krishna. Second is at the level of us, Sadhana Bhakti, where we are practicing the regulative principles. We are trying to purify ourselves. Remember the story of the businessman. 12.10. Just try to work for Krishna, direct or indirect. When I say direct, you can work and offer service in the temple in any form, or you learn the scriptures like Gita and speak about Gita, spread the knowledge. That is also directly working for Krishna. 12.11, Nishkama Karma Yoga, give results of your work to me. So this is the summary of what we have discussed for the last 1 hour. Let us go to the last slide. Thank you very much. Having devotional service to the Lord begins with hearing about the Lord, Shravanam. Since we are on devotional service, let me try to play this video. If it plays, this is a small clip about Udupi Sri Krishna Puja in Udupi. Let us see if it plays. Can you all hear?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Now, the floor is all open. It is for you all to ask any questions on anything that you would like to have more clarity or more details. And thank you very much for being such wonderful devotees listening to the glory of the Lord. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Yes, yes.
Hare
Thanks.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a great session. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Uncle. Hare Krishna. All glories to the Lord.
Very nice session, Prabhuji. Indeed, enjoyed a lot.
Thank you so much, Santosh. Thank you. Any question would you would like to ask? Don't hesitate. It could be simple concept, but asking question makes the learning for me.
I have one question. Rather, I just want some detailed insight. Means if we can get it. We
Yes, sir.
always we understand that we should be in equanimity. But the things is happening means either in happiness or sadness, like today also you told. But normally with our physical senses, with our mind and all, we feel the happiness, we feel the sadness. So when we talk about equanimity, so happiness stays is there, sadness stays is there. So how we, and it can be felt with the body also, we can feel that sadness and happiness. With our mental state also, we can feel that. So equanimity is what actually in both the state, what we have to be, because the state is going to remain over there. But what the actions or what the, the status we need to achieve, that we can very well define this equanimity.
Okay. Very good question, Santosh. And let me try to give you a very easy answer. Equanimity is at the level of Sthita Prajna. So as you described, it is difficult to achieve, but it's not impossible. Because Sthita Prajna comes from Abhyasa. First is knowledge. So we are now all aware after reading Gita that Krishna says, if you want to be happy in this world, you must learn to be a Sthita Prajna. And to be a Sthita Prajna, you must be of equanimity of mind. And what is he trying to say is that first realize both happiness and let's say suffering are related. Sitoshna Sukha Dukkada, he says that in second chapter. Summer comes, after summer there is rainy season, after rainy season winter, and it goes. So don't be fixated. So when you are under joy, it's far easier for all of us to bear because joy is something which we all like, we are all happy. But the most important thing that we should prepare, and what is abhyasa, what is sadhana, is learning the principle of Krishna's wisdom. And he says, when suffering comes, you should accept it. See, you can't change anything. Now, to give you an example, you see, COVID is such a raging problem outside in our country. And COVID visited us at home. Mihir went down with COVID. We are in isolation for the last 17 days. I have not stepped out of my house. So this is the reality. So is it a very conducive time? Is it a very joyful moment? No, it is not. But have we changed anything? Because misery is reality, suffering is a choice. So we said, we will continue to live our life as it is. Nothing changes. We are doing Kirtanam, we are doing Shravanam. We had our session. This thing is going to end, isolation is going to end tomorrow. It doesn't matter. This is, I'm not saying I am an example of equanimity. This is a step, a small step towards equanimity. And what did we do? How did we take this misery? We said we will not suffer. Take away suffering from your mind. Yes, what is the joy in this moment of suffering also that Mihir recovered very fast. So you should see the positive things of suffering as well. And say that, well, Lord has been kind. Now that is faith. If Lord has decided because of our karma, we have to face COVID, that is fine. But the faith in the Lord helps us accept that and then see for the positivity, positive things that are happening and then live our life as though nothing has changed. Don't complain. Don't have a gripe. Don't go and say that अरे भगवान ने हमको punishment दे दिया, भगवान ने हमको वो कर दिया. कुछ नहीं किया. हमारा कर्म हमने भोगा है, खुशी से भोगा है. And now this is possible for all of us. I am a sadhaka, you are a sadhaka. So whenever misery comes visiting our home, it could come through the door, it could come through the window. All we should say is that I open my door, please come in, because misery is part of my life. I can't change the reality. All I can change is I accept you, I acknowledge you, and I have also decided to be with you. I will wait till you go away from my house. That is equanimity. And it comes through practice. Keep telling your mind, keep saying that this is what Gita has told in second chapter. Krishna has said, to be a Sthita Prajna, I must be equanimous. Then you go there slowly. And as I told you, Bhakti Yoga is entire life's sacrifice. You can't be a Sthita Prajna, even if you want to, unless you are blessed by the Lord at birth so fast. We will take, and as we move closer and closer, as we age, we realize more and more about the Lord and we surrender more and more. That is how we can become equanimous in life. Make sense?
Yeah, very much. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Any other question? So that is one other important thing. Whenever Krishna is saying be equanimous, is that if you have faith in me, believe that whatever happens to your life is for the good of you. That is faith. So COVID, no COVID. Promotion, no promotion. You had food, you don't have food. It doesn't matter. Accept it as the fruit of the Lord. That is surrender. Simple. Don't analyze too much. Don't compare, because comparison makes it even worse. I got, you didn't get. I have, you don't have. All that are relative dualism of this world. Bhakti is only one reality, and that is I am with the Lord, and Lord is with me always. Nothing can change it, day or night. Any other questions? Suresh, you want to ask anything?
No. I think it is well explained. I joined little late, but
Okay.
I could connect immediately with what you are saying. So this was really good. Thanks.
Thank you, Suresh.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you. And you will understand the example of COVID that I
Yes,
gave.
absolutely. Yes, I could
So-
really relate that immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for the benefit of all, Suresh is our president of the managing committee. So he knows all the families which are going through this suffering, and he is monitoring who are in quarantine for how long. And he is giving us wonderful support. So we are one family.
Yeah, I think that's I observed in Athens also. Yeah, they are good
Yes.
people, are cooperative, and that's good.
It's wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we must not get it, but then once you get it, you must accept it.
Yes.
That is the beauty of life.
True.
Alok, you have any questions? Jayaraman, you have any questions? Arnab, I see you there. Any question? Either the silence shows that the lesson was, or the session was very good, all of you have understood, or the session was so bad that none of you have understood anything to ask any question. I don't know which part of it is true.
Oh, it was phenomenal. We are all speechbound.
Thank you. So there are no questions. Ramesh, Nandita, then we will close the session.
Nothing from my side.
Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. May God bless all of us. May Krishna bless all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.